So today I am here with Ollie Button and Alex Broadhurst. They both left SPH Sixth Form 2 years ago to pursue apprenticeships. And we are very lucky to have them here today to talk through their experiences, their roles, and to find out if they've got any tips that they would pass on to our current Year 12s who might be considering going down the apprenticeship route. So first of all, gentlemen, thank you for coming and doing this. I know that you're both working from home. If you could start by just introducing yourself and the role that you currently have. Let's start with you, Ollie.
So I'm Ollie. As Claire said, I left Sixth Form 2 years ago. I went straight into an apprenticeship. I do have a gap year where I worked in multiple companies and did a little bit of travelling, as you do in a gap year. But my current role, I work at JPMorgan as a degree apprentice on the degree apprenticeship, which is in partnership with Exeter University. And my current role, I work as a kind of support analyst to help support some of the core systems that JPMorgan run and trade through.
So could you, for anyone who doesn't know, give a very short intro to who JPMorgan are?
Yeah, I'll give it my best shot. So JPMorgan are one of the world's largest investment banks. So they work in multiple things. They work in lending and commercial banking, so credit cards and things like that. And also they work in investment banking, which is investing in stocks and shares on behalf of companies and high net worth individuals.
That is a perfect explanation, Ollie.
Thank you.
Thank you. How about you, Alex?
Hey, so yeah, I'm Alex. Like you said, I left Sixth Form Power 2 years ago. God, just trying to follow on from Ollie. So yeah, I did a higher apprenticeship, not degree apprenticeship like Ollie. Same company for JPMorgan. I work in wholesale client onboarding, which in a nutshell is basically supporting the bankers and onboarding multinational corporations to the bank, more specifically doing things like regulatory compliance, that type of thing.
Okay. So what prompted you, Alex, to go down the apprenticeship route? Can you think back to the time when you thought, okay, this might seem like a viable option?
Yeah, I mean, I failed my first year of A-levels. I really did not like studying intensive study without any application of the work. So I knew that that university wouldn't really be cut out for me. So like it was about exploring what other options were out there, whether that be going into work or doing what I found to be was like an apprenticeship. So I kind of just looked through all the top 100 companies that I'd like to work for, that kind of thing, and then just seeing what young people's kind of working things that they had going on, and like it was always pushing me towards like apprenticeship schemes that they had. So yeah, I was just going through these companies I would want to work for, what apprenticeship schemes looked interesting, and then I read about the JPMorgan one and I was like, yes, I want that.
So you did an extra year at Sixth Form and then you applied in that final year?
Yeah, so yeah, I did my so I failed my ALS. I redid my AS levels, and then I applied in the start of my A2s for the apprenticeships. So I think the first one I applied for was in around November, October, that kind of time.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Alex. How about you, Ollie? When did you think that an apprenticeship might be a viable option?
Well, I think mine was a little bit of a different path to Alex. So I enjoyed the study. I was looking to go to Exeter University, as it happens, same uni I'm at the moment, to do physics. But during my A-levels, during the most intense time, I sort of lost my passion for physics. So I decided to take a gap year, and during that gap year, I worked in different places. And one of them was a credit risk firm in London. So I did a week's work experience there, and that was my first real experience for workplace, and I went in with no experience in finance or tech, and I came out knowing so much more with loads of hands-on experience, and that was sort of when it sort of struck me. Don't want to say it's like divine inspiration, but I realised that that's how I really learned best. So I was sort of fast-tracked through, and I learned so much more in that week than I had done just by studying books. So that's when I started looking at apprenticeships. And I looked at other ones. It wasn't just JPMorgan. I applied to quite a few other ones, but I was actually put onto the JPMorgan one by Alex. I think we had when he come back, he was on his apprenticeship and he told me all about it. And that's when it sort of piqued my interest, because I'd spent time in sort of a tech finance role anyway. So I looked at JPMorgan and I thought that's exactly something I'd want to do. But yeah, it was purely back to the thing of getting hands-on, getting real work experience and applying that to the concepts, because it just reinforced those concepts. And I found that things I never thought I'd be able to understand, I have been able to. So that's sort of what prompted me.
So what does a regular day look like? A regular day and a regular week look like for you, Ollie?
So I'm not sure whether mine differs, but I have a study day on Monday. So for my degree, I am given a day off a week, and it depends on the year of uni I'm in. So first year is Monday, second year is Tuesday, and so on. And during that day, I have all my lectures with my lecturers at Exeter University, and I do all my distance learning. So that's my Monday, pretty much the same every day. It's a full work day of study, so it's pretty exhausting, but it's interesting. And that means that I get most of my work done, and then any other bits I do in the evening. My regular day at work, I have a morning and evening call, so with my worldwide team, so in Houston and Mumbai. So that was a huge thing for me, working on a sort of 24-hour clock. And then my main role is support, as I briefly mentioned. So that's supporting the system. So if something's broken, someone will report it to us. I'll get in contact with the user and then work to fix the issue with them. And then if it's sort of quiet and everything's working, which is always quite nice, which usually is, I work on some development work. So whether that's creating dashboards to help people do their role, or automation to remove manual work. So if there's something that's repetitively done, we might automate it to save ourselves some time. And then I've got some meetings sort of scattered around. So it's sort of varied each day.
Okay. And how much holiday time do you get?
I think it's all the bank holidays, but I think it's 25 days.
So it's like having a regular job.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the thing is, those study days aren't holidays, because I think that's what people could think, but it's not. You are pretty stuck into it on those days, and if you don't use them, it will catch up to you. So yeah, it's like a normal job, but I think it makes you appreciate your time off, definitely. Okay.
How about you, Alex? What does a normal day, week look like for you?
A normal day, week. So I'm a bit different to Ollie, because I've finished my apprenticeship now completely. So I have no study days. I'm just fully working. But my previous kind of working week would consist of like 4-day working week. I'd have the Wednesday off to study, so that would be doing my industry qualifications that I think Ollie is doing as well. So I'd study on those days, doing those things. That was 3 exams for me, and then on the other 4 days I'd be working in my role. So the way my role works is it's more in a kind of projecty kind of design. So I wouldn't necessarily walk in on one day and be doing the same thing I'll be doing the next day. So it's quite heavily about managing my time, and then what's the most pressing thing that needs to be done that day. So yeah, and that's since then until now, that's kind of how my roles kind of changed. So for example, like last 2 weeks I've been working on quite a big project that's required me to spend considerable more time past the 9 to 5, that just to meet deadlines for the clients and things like that. So mine isn't so strict like to 9 to 5. It's kind of what the business environment's like, what's kind of pressing at the time.
How have you found the studying, Alex, and what qualification have you now got at the end of your apprenticeship?
So yeah, so for my higher degree, my higher apprenticeship, not degree apprenticeship, I've got a level 4 investors operations certificate, which is basically it's like the accredited financial services operations certificate for the sector. So that consisted of me completing 3 exams, one in risk, IT, and securities. So yeah, the exams itself, I mean, like Ollie said, I mean, I didn't make the best time of my study days when I initially joined. So I did pass my first exam first time, but I didn't pass my second exam. Second exam didn't pass first time. So it kind of like a learning curve to like understand that you have to really balance your work between actual work and studying. But yeah, the exams were challenging, but still really kind of rewarding in the sense that the things we were studying we encountered at work. So it was a lot different from what A levels was like. I felt that a lot of what you learn in A levels you will never encounter again in your life. But because these exams are created by the people whom the qualification would be most utilized by, all the stuff on there is relevant and it can be applied during your role. I think Ollie was saying a similar kind of thing about that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Alex. Yeah, what are your thoughts, Ollie?
Oh no, I completely agree. I mean, to start, it's sort of I'm definitely like a more 9 to 5 role in some senses because I am tied into a support rota, so someone will take over from me. But if there are deadlines for like some development work in the background, then I might have to do a little bit extra. But mine's much more of a consistent workload, I think, rather than like peaks and troughs or really intense spikes like Alex had over the last 2 weeks. But my exam format is slightly different, so I don't really have them. I think my understanding is Alex's are sort of spread out a bit, whereas mine are all in an exam, traditional uni exam week. So I recently had my exam week at home, which was a bit strange. But so mine is more of a build-up. There's no real indicators, and then it's all at the end. So I sort of, due to that, I just tried to make the most of all my study days because I knew there would be so much content to cover. And if I didn't understand it to start with, it would be a bit like A levels. If you come to the end of it and you don't know stuff, it's much more difficult to revise for. So I completely agree with Alex that once you start making use of your study days, like makes such a difference. And also the actual hands-on stuff, pretty much everything I've done has been applicable pretty much straight away the next day. Some bits have taken a bit longer. But I mean, yeah, the stuff I've been doing at university, I speak to my co-workers about and they've used repeatedly and they mention on calls and stuff. So it's definitely much more applicable than just doing an exam question here and there or a practical here and there. It definitely is like straight applied.
So what qualification will you have at the end of this?
So I will have a BSc in Digital Technology Solutions from Exeter University. So it's a standard degree, so standard 3-year degree. We do it over 4 years to accommodate for the fact that we are only effectively studying 1 day a week. So it's a standard accredited degree from Exeter, like someone who went permanently and full-time would get. However, they in the 4 years they get a master's, whereas we just get the BSc standard degree from it. And also I think we get an apprenticeship qualification at the end, which does say that we are qualified and we have met the kind of traditional skills that are needed by employers within the IT sector. So the ability to understand complex things and present it in a concise manner might be one skill that we have to do. So we do kind of get a qualification, but it's not like a financial sector recognised qualification like Alex got.
So your CVs are going to be pretty amazing by the end of the time of doing your apprenticeships, by the sound of things. Can you just talk through a little bit what you enjoy most and some of the challenges that you have with your roles? Ollie.
Yeah, I'll go first on this. So I think the thing I enjoy most is how hard I'm pushed. So I've always enjoyed being pushed. And I was pushed to A level and then I kind of had a year off, so I wasn't really pushed then. So getting back into it, I'm loving being pushed and learning so much. So, I mean, for the first 6 months, probably safe to say that I didn't know what I was doing much, but because I was just learning so much about so many different areas. I think that was the thing that's exciting, is also one of the biggest challenges for me, because I didn't come from a tech background. I'd never really written a line of code before I joined the company. So being thrown into a tech degree and then having to learn all that stuff on the job was a massive challenge and such a steep learning curve. But that was, as I said, it was one of the good things, because I was surrounded by industry experts. So my team, they're a much more senior team. So most of them have been there for 4 or 5 years plus. There's no real graduates or anything like that. And some of them have been in the bank for 20 years. So I'm able to be pushed, but also have a support network of people that allows me to, if I get in a rut or hit a plateau of not understanding something, I can set up a call with them, and then they'll walk me through it. And they've helped me understand some complex topics that I didn't think I'd get my head around. So that is definitely one of my favorite things, is how far I'm being pushed and the breadth of topics I'm being taught about. And then challenge wise, as I said, having no previous real tech experience to start with, that was not a hindrance, but an obstacle I had to get over. But I kind of don't rely on that anymore, as I feel like I've got a good base now. And another challenge was, I think, slightly less applicable now being at home, but moving away and balancing work and uni was a massive, massive thing. It's like having to cook yourself, shop for yourself, sort out bills and all that sort of stuff, which I hadn't necessarily considered, or had considered, but sometimes you forget that they take up a lot of time.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. How about you, Alex? Things that you've liked, things that have been a challenge?
Things that I've liked, things that have been a challenge. Because of the nature of my role, it's very international, in the sense that I have to collaborate with lots of different teams, literally across the world. Like, for example, the project that I've literally just finished a significant part of involved a Japanese team and a Mexican team, and my team working in conjunction.
Wow.
So that's like, you're getting both ends of the world, and it's about like almost bringing them together to make something work. But that's really, I find that really interesting. I get to speak to every day I get to speak to people from literally different parts of the company, different parts of the world, and I really like that whole collaborative environment. So yeah, that's probably my favorite kind of thing that I've enjoyed. Challenges again, a lot of what Ollie's talking about I completely agree with, in terms of moving out, starting like a real adult life alongside studying and studying, doing a job, all that kind of thing. So that was like that initially was a very big struggle of mine, but it takes you a few months, but you get used to it. But I mean, the thing that I always say was the biggest struggle for me at the time was having the courage to like speak up and things like that, and say what you actually feel, because it's so easy to come into this environment thinking it's the big old corporate world that you can't say anything. You're just a foot soldier there to push a pen about. But it's so important that you make your voice heard from the beginning. And that's something that I didn't do, and I think it held me back at times. I wouldn't say things when I should have probably said them. So even whether that's saying, suggesting an idea, or saying you've made a mistake, that kind of thing, I just think that kind of held me back in a way. But that's such an important point, Alex, because that all just comes from confidence, doesn't it? But actually, once you've done it once or twice, the confidence starts building. So what prompted you then to become a little bit more vocal? I'll give you an example about, so there was a time where I'd written an email and saying like explaining something, and then somebody came back to me querying it, and I didn't have the backing up information that I could go back to the person quick, like in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
So it just made me look unorganized, and it kind of like set me back in like kind of, I don't really want to say anything anymore. So I think about like the way I combated it was, when I've got something to say, like I say it, but I also know that if somebody comes back to me, they can say, why have you said that? What's the reasoning behind it? And there's like a clear kind of process of how I arrived at that conclusion. And I think initially, even if I was saying something, I wasn't necessarily having the information to back it up, which was just letting me down and making my voice essentially not be as valued in a way, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah. I guess going back to one thing that's quite nice about your apprenticeships is you both get paid. So I guess one thing that you both like about your apprenticeships is that you get paid.
Yeah, definitely. That is an added bonus actually to have. So I might speak about that. The previous point, I just want to sort of touch back on it to Alex, that he said about having his voice heard. I got given a couple of really good pieces of advice. So the first one was, when you're coming into one of these things, one of the best things you can do is speak up when you don't know much, because there are processes and things being done within companies, not just this company, but any company or any organisation, that have been done for so many years that no one questions them. So if you question them quite often, they might be stuck in their way of doing things. So that gave me confidence to speak up, that your lack of knowledge can sometimes lead to something improving. And the other one was, I'm sure Alex can vouch this, we're going to go back to it, but you always feel like everything you're going to ask is a stupid question. But someone in my team told me, unless you ask the same question 3 times, it's not a stupid question, because how are you meant to know? And once you get past 3 or 4 times, just write it down. And then, because people might get a little bit fed up, but those are 2 pieces of advice that made me feel much more comfortable to just speak up and say silly things.
Yeah. Like you said, you've both gone into an institution which is years old. These processes have been around for years. How are you expected to know what these processes are? So, you're the ideal people to be questioning.
Definitely.
And the more you
Exactly.
do it, the easier it appears.
It's like, I think when you come in, you see this establishment, and you kind of like this big company, all these people here, you want to kind of match that greatness that's already established.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of get carried away in trying to do that when you're there to learn and understand primarily before you get to that. You kind of want to skip that step, run before you can walk.
Yeah. So can we, for a minute, gentlemen, look back to the application process that you went through? Because, people apply to uni, and yeah, that's a tough application process, but applying to an apprenticeship is a very different kettle of fish.
Harder.
So let's start with you, Alex, because you did yours first. I remember you doing yours. Can you talk through the process that you went through?
So yeah, my process was, so I touched on it a bit earlier. I said I looked for the companies that I wanted to work for, and the roles that I'd kind of I'd find interesting. So initially that was procurement. So I looked at all these companies, what apprenticeship schemes that they've got going, and if they aligned with what kind of job I'd like to work in. So that translated into me applying into 8 apprenticeships: Leonardo, BT, Transport for London, JPMorgan, Santander, BAE, and and a few others. So that I applied to all those schemes. I had a pretty good CV. Me and my mum spent a good time working on it.
It was a good CV. I still have a copy of your CV. I use it as a reference.
I got told it was the best CV that they did. I basically I put a lot of effort into making a really good CV, because that essentially was the foot in the door kind of thing to get to the interviews. So yeah, I spent a lot of time doing that. Pretty much all of these companies made you do a psychometric test. And for those of you who don't know what it is, it's basically, it's kind of like Ollie, you can help me out on this. How do you explain a psychometric test?
I think it's like trying to analyze and find sort of particular personality traits, I think, isn't it? Along the lines of, so see whether, for me, I think they were sort of around, I got a breakdown of one of them. It was like an app you had to download, and it was saying whether you were good at teamwork, whether you worked better on your own, whether you were intuitive, or whether you needed a lot of prompting and stuff like that to see whether you've got. I think it's like an easy way for them to kind of see, have you got the base skills we're looking for?
Yeah.
And then to get your foot in the door is the massive thing. I think, like, just getting yourself to get yourself across. Because when you're just on a piece of paper, it's so easy to kind of get dismissed. But once you get there, you can be this bubbly, passionate, and you can impress them. But yeah, that's what psychometric is.
But one thing that you talked about was the applications, but the application in itself is a big task, isn't it? You know, it's not just about filling out your personal information and sending maybe a quick covering letter with a CV. Many of them demand that you kind of like write big sections about, you know, skills, various projects that you've worked on, etc. You know, was it quite a lengthy process?
Completely. I think, I mean, when I was discussing it with you and my mum, I think the things that we were saying is that you don't want to be just another stack of a piece of paper in that stack. And it was important that, because they spend, I think the average you spend like is 30 seconds on a CV or something before they know if they want to interview you. So it was very important to get across your message that they want to hear about you, clear and concise, but also have all the supporting information that if they wanted to look further, they would have it. So, I mean, I was speaking to my manager about like one of the reasons why she hired me a few months ago, and she said that she really liked the first paragraph of my CV, and that was basically me just kind of selling myself in a short, concise paragraph about what my skills are. And that was just the first thing on it. That's one of the reasons why she like hired me. So yeah, I mean, that getting a really good CV is, I'd say, the first key thing in the game to going towards an apprenticeship completely.
I completely agree with that. I think I went on sort of a week with another company at some point, and the one thing they tried to do us, we had a coach, and it was get your if you want to pitch yourself in 25 to 30 seconds, which is what Alex was saying about the first paragraph, you need to show them why you're good, what skills you bring, what your aims are, and it's quite a hard thing to do in sort of few words. So yeah, getting a CV is the building blocks to get you through the sort of the selection process of just being, do I like them or do I not? Because there's no real depth to you when you've just got a CV, so you need to really get yourself across, and so massively.
Okay, so we've done the application process, we've done the psychometric test. What's next?
I mean, a lot of them did them differently. I think this is where everyone starts. I think a lot of them, you know, do that first kind of CV online test, then on. But from there, that's where everyone starts to branch out. So I know for Leonardo, for example, the defense company, it went straight to interview, where I had to present something to them, a business idea.
And did you do that face to face, Alex?
Yes, so I did that face to face. Yes, and then for Santander, similarly, I had to come up with a different business idea and pitch that to somebody. As well as having associated interviews, the same with Leonardo. We operate with a phone call interview followed by a group exercise interview process, followed by a networking evening, and then finally with a video interview. So it's quite an extensive process, but I mean, there's reasoning behind it. I mean, each stage gives people who from a different kind of background the best kind of way to make themselves shine. So it's kind of to look at the whole group, not just for one thing, you see what I'm saying. It weighs up everything.
And can you remember how many people kind of got left behind after each section, if that's the nice way of putting it?
So I mean, for my year, I don't know what the numbers were for Ollie's. So I believe 10,000 people applied. 44, I believe, got a role across
Wow.
both sides. It was a fair 1,000 got left behind at each stage. Towards the networking stage, there was only about 200 people left, I think.
I mean, that's quite an accomplishment in itself, to go from 10,000 applications to be one of 44 who got the role. That's something to be very proud of.
I mean, I think the statistic is you have I mean, it doesn't sound encouraging, but you have a 1% or a 0.1%, 5% chance of getting in. But
yeah, that doesn't sound encouraging.
yeah, but it's not that bad.
It's not that bad. But, if you understand the process, and if you do the prep work beforehand, before each part of the process, then you've got a greater chance of being successful. How about you, Ollie?
I'll start off by saying that I agree with Alex with the statistics. I think mine was pretty much similar. I think that's 4,500, 5,000 applicants. I think that's 10 places. So I think this year there's going to be a few more. But yeah, it's pretty competitive. But I think your point about actually, if you prepare and know yourself and know why you're applying, you're putting yourself ahead of a lot of other people. Yeah. I'm not putting it down at all, but it's just I think you've got to go in knowing why you want to be there, why your skills are useful, how you can demonstrate those skills, and things like that. So if you're confident and you can explain yourself beyond your CV, but also justify all those things on your CV, then you've got a good chance. And if you come across well in person, then that's another thing. But I think one to know, especially with the video interview and the networking evening, they're quite unique things. Well, the networking evening is, and there's some companies will have different things. So for one, which was really strange for me, was Accenture. We went in for one of the tests to see how we dealt with problem solving. We got a VR headset put on and we stood in a room and we had to complete problems in VR, which is I've never heard of before, which was really, really unique, but it was interesting to do. So got to be prepared for those kind of curveballs.
Did you know that was going to be one of the tests before you went, or was that one of their surprises for you?
Well, I'd been on the Accenture Taste of the Week, so we got a little bit of, not inside knowledge, but it was an opportunity, because that was an application in itself. So you get fast tracked to a assessment centre because of previous stages, but because there's a lot of people who applied to that, we got fast tracked. But I knew there was VR, but it was kept under wraps. It was like, this is our secret weapon. And I didn't know what to expect. But I think one of the main things to point out is the video interview, especially in this climate with everyone being at home. It's going to be much more of a commonplace, and I think it's going to appear in companies who wouldn't normally have done it.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the only ways they can do it, especially up until probably September, December.
The great thing about, sorry to interrupt you, Ollie, but the great thing about a video interview as well is that you can record it and you can send it to so many other people that might not have had the opportunity to interview or speak to that person, given other circumstances. So more people can be involved in the decision making, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think the one thing is that it's really, really strange, because a lot of them now aren't video interviews per se, like us three chatting. It's more of question will pop up on the screen and you record yourself, more like, I don't know, a YouTube video or something. So there's no feedback from the other person. So preparing for that and getting used to speaking on camera, listening to your own voice and being concise in the way you come across is really important, because in person, if you're speaking to an interviewer, they might be happy to run over by 5 minutes. But when the computer says, that's it, it'll cut off, it will stop recording. And quite often you only get one redo. So that's something to really practice, because I think they're going to become much more commonplace. And it's really strange, but it has its benefits, because instead of one person interviewing you, 20 people could have their opinion on you, and if that one person didn't like you, those 19 others can vouch for you, so it might give you a better chance if you're comfortable in front of the camera.
Yeah. So what else within your application process do you remember and you think would be valuable to put across to students today?
I think it was just showing a passion was the hardest thing. So reading about the company and its values is what I really did. So not to pander to them and say, oh, I can do this, this and this, but see whether I aligned with the company, because these big companies are fantastic at weeding out the people who don't have these values. Finding whether I actually had the values to go to that company, and then I'd think about, right, so the things they want from an applicant, how have I demonstrated it? How am I implementing these in my day-to-day life, or how have I done it in, I don't know, like Duke of Edinburgh or my previous roles or stuff like that, and really understanding what the company stands for, their goals and things like that, because the questions that you previously mentioned, sort of the paragraphs you have to put together, will often touch on those. So you really want to be sure that you can demonstrate convincingly those skills, rather than saying, I'm good at this, I am passionate about this. It's saying, I did this, it demonstrates this, and this is why I can do it going forward and how I want to improve it. So I think that's my biggest piece of advice, is spend the time before you apply, because especially with deadlines coming up, it can be easy to think, right, I'll just quickly write a paragraph, get in, send it off. But quite often taking those extra days can really make the difference to get you through to the next stage. And just read around your subject, I think, is one of the main things. Just being able to demonstrate that this isn't just, you're not just doing it for the apprenticeship, you like what you do. So whether that's reading a book about it, or that you can bring up in your interview, or applying for one of their taster programs, because that is a great way to get involved in it. Because I went on a number of taster programs, and they really showed me which companies I liked and which ones I didn't. So
I don't know about you two, but I think that when you've got these application forms from the different organisations, and they are quite lengthy, and some ask you to, one question might be a very large paragraph, I will quite often say to students to kind of keep that, because you're doing it electronically, but keep that in a Word document, because even though you're not going to necessarily just copy and paste that into your next application form, you're generally going to be talking about the same stuff. Like you've just talked about the skills that you might get from Duke of Edinburgh. If you've already written that in one way, you can kind of take some of those bits and use them in another application form. Would that be a fair point?
Absolutely. And I think also you're speaking about the Word document is a great piece of advice, because those browsers quite often will just shut down and kick you out and you lose your work. So that's one thing I'd advise: write it in a Word document, spell check it, grammar check it, and also save it, because some of these things time out after 20 minutes. And when you lose something you've been crafting for days, it's a bit frustrating.
Yeah.
But yeah, reusing things, well, as you say, not copy and pasting it directly, but if these are your set of skills, use them. Don't try and find, if you think, oh, I've told them about my ability to communicate well in another one, just because you think you're using it again doesn't mean that company isn't interested in it. It's so reuse your strongest skills, because they are your selling point. I think that's a really important thing. Don't be afraid to sell yourself that you're amazing at managing a project. If you are, no matter what company, they're going to think, they're going to lap that up and that's great. Just because they might think, not going to think, well, you might have said that to other companies. It's a great skill to have.
Alex, do you have any tips for our current Year 12s?
My advice would be try and don't let the task of completing the process be daunting. I think it is easy to look at it and go, oh my god, like there's so many people applying for it. But I'd say 75% of the people who apply for apprenticeships haven't done the proper research and proper preparation that needs to go into doing the processes around getting the job. So I'd say as long as you complete that kind of process, you apply for 10, say, you'll get at least one, 100%. But yeah, so that's for me, that's the important thing. Just make sure you know about yourself, like you identified your skills, why you want to work for that company, like what kind of thing you'd want to do, those kind of things. You've got to like take a long hard look at yourself really and understand who you are, what you want to do and why you want to do it. So yeah, just don't let the task of that be daunting.
And just, I guess, a quick one for me as well is many apprenticeships will, or many organisations will give a deadline, but that deadline, you know, if they have enough applicants at a certain date, they may well close that. So I think that's a really important point for any student interested in doing an apprenticeship.
Oh, completely. I mean, the sooner you can start it, the better. Really. I know for JPMorgan, we just close the gates when, you know, when everyone's here. Kind of, we have enough people. That's it. So each year it closes earlier. There's no like end cutoff date really.
And it's a continuous research project, isn't it? It's not like all apprenticeships come out on January the 1st. Apprenticeships are being introduced weekly. So that, I would say, is one of the most arduous parts of applying for apprenticeships, because you've got to keep track, because you do not want to miss the opportunity that might be the one for you.
Yeah. I was signed up to like various mailing lists for companies to say that they had apprenticeship schemes that were run in the previous year, and they would be like, come back next year for the schemes, but they had no date. So I just had put my email in, made sure that when they do come out, I'm the first to know. And that's how I found a couple of the ones that I applied for, because I put my names into the mailing list. But yeah, you've literally got to be looking all the time, otherwise, because they come and go.
So now you've finished your apprenticeship, Alex, what are you doing now? What is your future?
What am I doing now? I mean, my role throughout my apprenticeship and to now has progressed massively. I'm constantly learning, doing new things. Like this week I'm doing something that I've never done before, which I'm finding really interesting. So in that respect, like it's the learning is not stopping, despite the fact that I'm stopping like qualification learning. So I mean, for the future, I mean, I'm just trying to, you know, develop a center of excellence in my role, that kind of thing, making sure that I know what I want to do, know what I can do, and then I'd like to achieve another promotion, and then, you know, while doing that, speaking to my mentors, that type of people, developing a path where I'd like to go take my career, you know.
Brilliant. How about you, Ollie?
Yeah, I think I've got a little bit longer left, but I definitely do have sort of aspirations after the apprenticeship. So I think what I'd like to do, because for me, I think after it's just continuous improvement, like Alex said, because a lot of my stuff is, my job is development, so like programming, coding, and there's always new languages coming out, trends are changing, so a language now might not be relevant in 4 years. So for me, there's always stuff to learn, and that's interesting. But something that I'd like to do after the apprenticeship is achieve my promotion once I graduate, and then I want to sort of run a small team. I'd like to have a small team for a development project, rather than just be a software developer. I'd like to manage that project and have the goal of delivering it, dealing with problems and overcoming stuff like that. So have experience in a more managerial role, I think, is something I'd like to do after the apprenticeship, definitely.
Well, you two both have very, very, well, amazing futures ahead of you in what you are doing.